What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Pick Six Podcast. Happy Halloween. I'm Will Brinson. I'm your host, joined by Ryan Wilson and John Breech, a.k.a. Papa Pig, for a trade deadline extravaganza. Gentlemen, how we doing?
I'm going to tell you what Eric Asilius, our coworker, what his dry cleaner told him when his dry cleaner said to him, "Happy Halloween." Okay. That's a fantastic comeback. Hey, happy Halloween.
No, then you hug the person who said it for celebrating the best holiday on the planet. I went full corporate synergy. You can watch Peppa Pig on Paramount Plus. I'm wearing a Peppa Pig costume, and I'm going to snort a lot, not during the podcast, but tonight.
Right, good luck. What's your daughter going as?
Snort like a pig.
You said you're going to you pause. Interesting pause there right after I'm going to snort a lot. What are you going to snort, Johnny?
Oh, man.
John, what's your daughter going as?
Maribel from Encanto.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the bag of cocaine. She's going to walk around with you as the coke snorting pig.
That's what people start calling child services when you let your child dress as a bag of drugs, Wilson. I know it's been a while since you've had a toddler.
That's true.
The times have changed.
Captain Spock notes that would be a breach of contract.
Yeah, well, in the 80s, you could let your 4-year-old smoke with their costume. No one cared. Can't do that stuff anymore.
Even as a non-filtered cigarette back then.
I went as a cigarette one year. My parents thought that would be hilarious to have me dress up as a cig for Halloween. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. If you're listening on any of the various podcast platforms, make sure to give us a 5-star review. If you want to go back one show in the feed, we got Katie Mox, myself, Emery Hunt, and Prop Stars looking at early odds for week 9. Before you put any money down this week, make sure and give that a listen to make sure you're making responsibly intelligent decisions. Last year, we had the bunch of trades go down last season. Christian McCaffrey to San Francisco, Bradley Chubb to Miami, suspended Calvin Ridley from Atlanta to Jacksonville. This year, not quite as much. Some big pass rushers sent away, but none of the same pop. It's a CMC. Wilson, remember when you made fun of me for saying that the Christian McCaffrey trade was good for the 49ers? More importantly, you got less trades this year. Do you think it means anything from a macro perspective?
Well, when Harry asked the question, not a lot had happened. So I was like, oh, maybe this is just the function of teams. And each and every week we talk about this on Sunday night. This week, this team is awesome. The next week, that very same team is terrible. And it just goes back and forth. And we're sort of chasing our tails on it. And I said, well, maybe the whole parity situation, because it feels like this year more than other. Of course, we probably say this every year. That there's
I think it's more apparent this year than usual.
More uncertainty. So maybe that gave teams pause, because 3 weeks ago we were all in on the Vikings blowing things up, and then Kirk Cousins won 2 in a row. Then he tore his Achilles. They didn't do anything except for, we'll talk about in a second. They did a little something, and maybe that helps.
They did 2 little somethings.
I think overall, 2 little somethings. I think overall it just feels like there's more equality, Breach, which is what we're all striving for. And maybe that made it less likely to be some movement. Also, the other thing, it may be an off year for, and again, we have some arguments to that point I'm about to make. Off year for Christian McCaffrey type players going from a truly terrible team to a team that's a contender. We do have some high level players moving around, but no, certainly CMC type level.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you need is that you have to have very motivated buyers and very motivated sellers. For instance, you just say a random team needs a running back and they already decided we're willing to trade a 4th-round pick for a running back before the deadline, and that's it. And the Raiders call up and say, we'll give you Josh Jacobs for a 1st-round pick. Is there a trade to be made? Maybe, but probably not, because this team's not willing to give up. They already feel good about what they have, and they're not going to throw their future away to make one acquisition. So I think we just didn't see a lot of needs line up, especially offensively, which led to us, or maybe everybody just wanted to go out and celebrate Halloween. Maybe that's my new theory. Put their Peppa Pig costume on and go celebrate.
Well, I mean, I think you look at the standings, and like in the AFC, the Steelers and the Browns are playoff teams, and the Browns have been starting PJ Walker, and we don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to be healthy or if he's even going to be good. Kenny Pickett's hurt. And it's like, I mean, the point being is like those 2 teams are 4-3, and I don't think anybody feels like the Browns defense is really good, and the Steelers have an incredible supply of magic beans that allows them to keep winning these football games. But I mean, generally speaking, those 2 teams, I think that if you are in that 3 and 4 range, like the Chargers, the Titans, the Texans, or even the 3 and 5 range, like the Colts and the Raiders, Broncos, and then you have the pass at 2 and 6. Like, you're not dead. The trade deadline is just early in the NFL. And then, even on the NFC side of things, Arizona, they traded their starting quarterback, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Carolina held on to Brian Burns, held on to all their guys. I think that they would like to try to make some kind of a push up the standings, and they're really only like 2.5, 3 games out. So, I mean, like, the NFC is maybe a little bit more like top heavy. You got San Francisco at 5-3 is the 6th seed, but then Minnesota at 4-4 as the 7th seed. So I mean, it's I think that parity certainly has something to do with it. Why don't we grade the trades though? And we will start with who do we start with?
Montez.
Tell you what, Chase Young to San Francisco.
Oh, ooh,
yeah. What do you think about that?
I love it.
Wilson, you want to grade it?
Yeah, I give it A+. Here's the thing, like, I'm still not convinced that John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan are good at picking the right players initially, but they seem to get around to the right players eventually. And because they have the right players in place strategically, quarterback, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, this team is competitive. And Trent Williams is another one. So they have the right players, Fred Warner. I mean, good on the list, but it seems like occasionally they swing for the fences and just they're not even in the stadium when they take the swing. They're still in the locker room. And then there are other times where they're trying to bunt the ball and they bunt a grand slam. And it feels like Brock Purdy was a grand slam bunt. Christian McCaffrey obviously was. Trent Williams, Fred Warner, they got in the draft. And I think this is just another piece, an obvious piece they needed, because this defense, and Breech, you can attest to this, given that you saw the game, how it unfolded with the Bengals going into Levi Stadium and whooping up on them. The defense isn't what it was at the beginning of the season. Now they have Javon Hargrave and Armstead in the middle. You have Bosa bookended with Chase Young. And by the way, Bosa and Chase Young played together at Ohio State. And at the time you would say, these are two of the best players on planet Earth, and they're playing on a college team. Imagine what they would look like on an NFL team. Well, we don't have to imagine because now they're going to do it.
2 seasons together at Ohio State, 42 combined sacks during those 2 seasons. And it is kind of crazy. You mentioned the Bengals game, and I do think that probably played a somewhat big part because it feels like the 49ers probably walked out of the Vikings game, that Monday nighter in week 7, and said, maybe that was a little fluky. We couldn't get after Cousins, but he's a smart quarterback, throws it quickly. We had to fly halfway across the country. We weren't healthy. And so then you go home and get your pants pulled down again. Now you're in trouble, and now you're going into the trade deadline thinking, all right, this happened 2 games in a row against 2 good quarterbacks. We have to make a move. And so this was definitely a splash by the 49ers.
Second round is a steal, too, by the way.
Third rounder.
Oh.
Third rounder for Chase Young. Second rounder was for Montez Sweat. Yeah. I mean, I think the third rounder is because this is a rental with Chase Young more than likely. Not more than likely a rental. They could obviously end up signing him to a long-term deal, but Chase Young is in a situation where he's going to want a ton of money. Former number 2 overall pick. Behind Kyler Murray, was he behind? No, Nick Bosa was behind Kyler Murray. Was he behind Joe Burrow? Is that right?
No, he was number 1 overall.
He was 1 overall.
Yeah.
Was he? He was 1 overall. I'm an idiot. I was thinking he and Nick Bosa were the same pick. Never mind. Carry on. Anyway, former number 1 overall pick. He is going to demand a ton of money. Like the 49ers just paid Nick Bosa a ton of money.
Second overall pick. We're done. You were right. You're not crazy.
Oh, Wilson was looking at me with disgust. I'm like flushed.
2020. It was the year after Bosa, though.
Why didn't you correct me? You were panicked because you didn't know?
No, I didn't say anything to you. I was going to say that just to make sure we grade both teams. I was reading.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all I was doing.
God, you freaked me out, Breech. Anywho, Chase Young's 24 years old, by the way. Like, there's a really good chance that the 49ers, who Burrow went 1, this is the 2020 draft, and so that means that the selection for the 49ers was Brandon Ayuk at 25. I remember they traded with the Vikings into that spot. But like the 49ers also had 14th. They took Javon Kinlaw that year. There's a really good chance that the 49ers had a huge grade on Chase Young, and that they have inside information because they have Nick Bosa on their team, and they believe that Chase Young down the stretch for a contender in a defense that is going to be really aggressive, that's going to feature him and Nick Bosa attacking quarterbacks. He's not going to see any double teams. He's going to make life easier for his old college buddy. Like that Chase Young can have a huge second half of the season And they're like, go get paid, dude, and help us win. You go get paid. It's a win-win. I give the Niners an A here easily for getting Chase Young. Even if it's just a rental, it's a 3rd-round pick, and they're expected, I believe, to receive compensatory selections in the 3rd round, and it's one of those comp picks. So it's even a back end of the 3rd round to trade because it's a compensatory pick. So for Washington, I sort of give them a D.
Brinson, and to that point, real quick on your comp picks, is that if Chase Young leaves in free agency, these 49ers will get a comp pick back. So it essentially becomes a free trade where they gave up nothing because they'll get a pick for Chase Young leaving.
Right. So if Chase Young is awesome, he's going to get paid a ton of money in free agency, which is going to get them a 3rd-round compensatory pick the following year. And if he's awesome, it means they made a deep run to the playoffs. Or more than likely, they make the playoffs and you would think they would make a deep run. And I mean, maybe it's an A+ for the Niners. Like, this is a great deal. The roll of the dice here is tremendous for the Washington. I give them a D. I don't see how it's like you drafted Chase Young 2nd overall to be a generational pass rusher to there was talk during that draft too, where it's like, if Joe Burrow wasn't here, you could easily take Chase Young 1st overall, and it just didn't work out for Washington at all.
Well, he tore his ACL. I mean, let's give him a break. That's why he struggled. He's been balling out this year, though. And I think the thing for me, and Breech, tell me what you think of this. So Diana Rossini, who's now the Athletic, tweeted this out after we'll talk about Montez Sweat, his teammate, in a second, but they were both traded. The Commanders are building in that they're stockpiling these draft picks. They now have 5 picks in the first 3 rounds, 4.5 if you worry about the compensatory part of it, 3 in the top 50. They have Payne and Allen locked up at defensive tackle. By the way, Jonathan Allen's made it clear he is not happy with the direction this organization is going. And the final thing that Diana tweets is the building seems thrilled right now, and I find that incredibly hard to believe when you were high on Sam Howell a month ago. The offensive line is in shambles. The offense can't move. Jonathan Allen's pissed off, and you're acting like it's the day before the draft. You're going to get the player that you want as opposed to Halloween, and you're building towards next year.
Yeah, the building seems thrilled. Why don't you talk to people in the locker room? Because I'm guessing they're not too thrilled. This team's already giving up on the season, and we're not even headed. Week 9 hasn't even started yet. So I'm guessing that the front office might be thrilled. But guess what? Those picks don't mean anything if you don't have a smart front office. They're just lottery tickets that you threw away. You threw away Montez Sweat and you threw away Chase Young with no guarantee return because you have no idea if you're going to hit on those picks. So I don't know why. I don't know. I just thought Washington got a little crazy. We're going to talk about Montez Sweat in a second. So
that's what I was going to say. Like, is it worth grading Washington in totality on the Montez Sweat and Chase Young deals?
So let's wrap this up. So A for San Francisco for me, for Brinson and Breech. What are you giving them?
For what?
San Francisco getting Chase Young.
Oh yeah, an A.
Okay, all right. So let's group together Montez and Chase.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Like for Washington on Montez Sweat, I mean, I think that it's a like we did this show a year ago, fellas, and when we did it, I'm not right often, but I was right about this. I said the Chase Claypool deal was an absolute disaster for the Bears. You guys were like, dude, you just settle down, buddy. It's a trade for a 2nd-round pick. It's not that big a deal. The Bears didn't win another game all season long. And just after they made that trade, they finished with the worst record in football. They gift wrap. It ended up being the 32nd pick because the Dolphins forfeited their pick in the 1st round. So the first pick of the 2nd round was 32 overall. And who did the Bears give up the rights to draft there, Wilson?
They moved from 1 to 9, so they passed on.
Joey Porter Jr.
Oh, at 32. Yeah. He ain't helping them win any football games. But yeah, I thought you meant if they stayed at 1, they could have had, they could have gotten any number of quarterbacks. Also,
no. Well, no. What I was saying is that the Bears did it again. They gave up another 2nd-round pick this year.
I did it again.
Yeah, I think it is an oops, I did it again because Montez Sweat is in the final year of his contract as well. He's on a 5th-year option at $11.5 million. And Washington just got maybe the first, probably a top 5 pick in the 2nd round in order for the Bears to trade for a 27-year-old pass rusher who is good, but has been playing opposite Chase Young, who's been more productive this year, even though I think in terms of pressures, maybe Sweat I have to look, maybe has more sacks. But the point being is you might have, if you give a top 40 pick for a 27-year-old pass rusher who you have to sign to a big contract, I don't know, man. That seems kind of iffy to me. I give the Bears a C+ here for the effort, and I give Washington an A- for getting what could be a really, really good pick back from Montez Sweat.
I don't mind. Go ahead, Breech.
Brinson, you're feeling way too generous here. I was going to give them a C-, but now the more I think about it, I'm lowering the Bears grade to a D.
I'm okay with the D. Yeah, that's fine with me.
So real quick, the 49ers, obviously, they're a contender. They're a Super Bowl contender. You feel like Chase Young puts you over the top. You give up a third-round pick. The Bears are not a Super Bowl contender. They do not need Montez Sweat right now. They overpaid, as you just mentioned, with the second-round pick. They have no use for him because he's going to be a free agent in March when they could have signed him anyway. Instead of, you could have kept the second-round pick and signed him in March. Best case scenario is that you sign him to a long-term contract and he becomes a cornerstone of your organization. But that's 5 years away. This just doesn't do anything for the Bears right now. Worst case scenario is he leaves in March. You gave up the second-round pick. You get a third-round comp pick back. But unlike the 49ers, where it essentially evens out, it doesn't even out here because, like you just said, this is going to be a top 35 pick that you paid for a guy who might only play 9 games. This is just bonkers. It is like the Bears don't know how the trade deadline works. The bad teams are the sellers. They're not the buyers. And they turned into the buyers. I don't know what's going on in Chicago, so this is a D for me.
Yeah, basically what you said. The only thing I'll say is that at least this time they got a good player. Last year, Chase Claypool proved that he maybe doesn't even care about football. Montez Sweat's a good player, but again, he's not a quarterback, so he's not a left tackle. He's not gonna help Justin Fields or save the organization. It doesn't make sense for the reasons you point out. So I will give it a D.
I'm gonna lower it to a D as well. You made you good point, Breech. I mean, like I killed the Bears for doing the Chase Claypool thing. Looked like a genius, and then promptly was like, I'm gonna give him a C+ because I like Montez. He's also like let's say they sign him to a long-term deal. He's gonna be in his 30s like pretty quickly. I mean,
7's not old to be an edge rusher. I think that part's fine. I think the problem is
I guess, but like
one of the worst teams in the NFL.
Well, let's just look at obviously the fact that they're terrible doesn't help. Just looking at the 2023 NFL draft, and this is sort of, here's the list. I'm just going to go through the top 10 players taken in the second round of this past year's draft. Joey Porter Jr. with that Bears pick for the Chase Claypool. Will Levis looked pretty good on Sunday. Sam Laporta was freaking awesome. Michael Mayer, very nice tight end for the Raiders. Steve Avila, Derek Hall, Matthew Bergeron, Jonathan Mingo. So I mean, and then Isaiah Foskey, whatever. BJ Ojulari. I mean, like there's just there's gonna be talent in that range, and the Bears gave up that opportunity. It's like a pretty big opportunity cost, considering that Montez Sweat is that age. You have to sign him to a big contract, and all the other factors.
Money, and he's an edge rusher. Like I don't hate that part of it. I just hate the other part. They're terrible.
It's better than Claypool for sure. All right, Josh Dobbs Wilson was traded to the Minnesota Vikings for a 2025 7th-round pick plus a 2025 swap of 6th-round picks. Grade the trade for the Minnesota Vikings, who obviously lost Kirk Cousins this past weekend for the season with an Achilles injury.
Yeah, I don't have any football advice for Josh Dobbs, but I do have some real estate advice. Do not buy a house where you are currently employed because you will only be there 7 to 8 weeks. He's been Cleveland, Arizona for 9 weeks, and now he's in Minnesota. In terms of the trade, I give it an A. What do you have to lose? You're not giving up much. We talked about this on Sunday night when Kurt went down. We weren't 100% sure, but we were pretty sure that he was going to be done for the year. I talked to Rick Spielman about this. He was the Vikings general manager who signed signed Kirk Cousins, and he also had Case Keenum.
Where did you talk to him? Where did you talk to him about it?
With the First Big Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
Where can people find that?
Wherever you get your podcasts. I talked to him about Case Keenum in 2017 when he won 13 games, and I said, "What about trading a 5th-round pick?" This is before the trade deadline, obviously, and Josh Dobbs happened for Case Keenum, who's now in Houston. And it wasn't any grand revelation, but it's something that we probably don't think enough about. He goes, Case can't come in and learn this offense overnight. It's a different offense. It wasn't the offense that he was here having success in 2017. Even if it's the same concept, it's going to be worded differently. I said, well, you can just read a number off a wristband. He goes, maybe. But then maybe this receiver on the right side does something differently in this scheme than he would do in the previous scheme. So there are a lot of moving parts. I think Josh Dobbs, the expectation isn't that he comes in and starts right away. I think he's insurance probably for Nick Mullins once he gets healthy. Jaren Hall maybe has to start this week as the rookie. They're not giving up on the season, and I don't think I would either in terms of like trying to move on from Daniil Hunter. But I think what you do is you play and see what you have, and you compete, and just fingers crossed. And that's no way to make your way into the playoffs. Get JJ back, Justin Jefferson, and maybe you can cobble something together PJ Walker style because the defense is playing better. But in terms of the trade, I give it an A. Nothing to lose.
Actually, sorry, Breech. The Cardinals get a 2024 6th-round pick. The Vikings get Dobbs and a 2024 7th-round pick. So it wasn't. I don't think it was a swap of 6th-round picks.
A late-round pick swap. Fair to say.
Yep.
I mean, I'll echo what Wilson said, but I'm not sure I'd give it an A. I'd probably do something in the B range. Just say a B. I don't know if this really upgrades you at quarterback, and so you're just kind of bringing someone in to learn on the fly. If you trust Jaren Hall, and like you said, Nick Mullins coming back from injury, I would have just swung for the fences with call the Titans about Ryan Tannehill, call the Saints about Jameis Winston, and if they say no, then you just move on. I mean, I just don't know that this is a trade.
Sorry to interrupt you, but when you say swing for the fences and follow out the Ryan Tannehill, I can't take it. At least say Andy Dalton.
Well, I think the way this offense is built, Ryan Tannehill would give the Vikings a better chance to win than Josh Dobbs. Andy Dalton, yeah, of course. I mentioned Andy Dalton on the podcast. He was my number one trade candidate. I would have called the Panthers about Andy Dalton. And maybe they did call, and all those teams said no, or they wanted too much compensation. But this is just a meh trade to me. I mean, good for the Vikings to try and do something. So, I'm not going to fail them. But
what does it say about the Cardinals and their quarterback situation?
It says that they are getting Kyler Murray back, and they don't care.
Yeah,
the Vikings just trade for a guy who got benched by the Cardinals. Okay.
Well, I think he got benched because they were trading him. I think they announced the benching because they were planning on trading.
No, you would keep him in as your starter so that his hype goes up.
Yeah, you would. That's like
we'll trade you our starting quarterback. What do you got for that?
Well, they're like we have like. I mean, I think like agent. I give the Vikings. I want to give. So, is there any kind of comparable? I was trying to like really quickly look up on mock draft to see Jaren Hall's compare. Oh God, he did not score very well. To see Jaren Hall's comparison, just to see if there was any like he can kind of scoot a little bit, right?
Oh, I can tell you about him. Yeah, I mean he was.
Well, I'm just wondering, is there like a comparison at all with like Josh Dobbs in the sense that does it make sense? Yeah, like does it make sense to have a Josh Dobbs type behind Jaren Hall if you're going to change your offense at all?
I don't think the Vikings. I don't think you can change the offense necessarily. Jaren Hall's a good athlete. He has a good arm. He's a veteran. Like he's literally 25 years old. He's 25 and a half. And I liked him a lot at BYU. I think he may have been injured. I'm not 100% sure during the sort of pre-draft process. He was terrible at the Senior Bowl. All those quarterbacks were. And, we'll see. He was 3 for 4 for 20-something yards, had the fumble in the red zone, I believe. I don't think any rookie outside of C.J. Stroud and, of course, Will Levis is going to give you an opportunity to win right away. And I think you're just sort of holding on for dear life and hoping maybe Josh Dobbs and or Nick Mullins gets up to speed. But, again, he's a good athlete. Nick Mullins is a relatively good athlete. Josh Dobbs, we know, is a good athlete.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I give both teams a question mark for this one because I'm like, I just want to see what the Vikings do with the offense. If there's any I mean, I don't know. You would think that they like Sean Mannion and Nick Mullins enough. They got him. Mullins on IR. He'll be back in a week. And
for instance, this is instant analysis. I'd like to see what Chase Young's going to do with the 49ers for the next 8 weeks before I grade them. But we're grading them right now.
Peppa's angry.
Maybe you should slow down on the snorting, Peppa. You're a little intense here. All right, moving along. Ezra Cleveland. Speaking of this is the other thing with the question mark with the freaking Vikings. They trade Ezra Cleveland to the Jaguars. It's like just traded for your quarterback goes down. You trade. They gave up a 2020. They get back a 2024 6th-round pick. So they basically traded Dobbs for Cleveland, or they traded they basically traded Dobbs for Ezra Cleveland, basically. But I don't know. This is kind of curious considering that you have to fancy yourself a playoff team of sorts, Breech, and you give away one of your offensive linemen who's actually a pretty good player at the guard position.
Yeah, this was an interesting move by the Vikings. It's a good thing they played on Monday night recently where I got to actually do some homework on the team. And so I guess their thought here is that Ezra Cleveland has a contract that's expiring. You have Dalton Risner kind of emerging there.
Yeah.
So at guard. And so now you're thinking, all right, well, are we going to be able to keep Ezra Cleveland? I think there was also some chatter that he wants to move to tackle maybe because that's what he played in college. And well, there's no room for him to play tackle in Minnesota. And who knows what kind of money he's going to ask for when he becomes a free agent after the season. He asks for tackle money. He asks for high-end guard money. And so if you're the Vikings, you're thinking he's probably not coming back anyway. So let's just try and get something in return. So I'll give the Vikings C+, but I think Jacksonville, I'll give them an A- because it is so hard to find top-level offensive line talent during the season. You know, it's not going to happen in free agency. You have to make a trade. Most teams aren't willing to give up somebody who is good. And Jacksonville already has two good guards in there with Brandon Scherf and Walker Little. So, you know, Ezra Cleveland doesn't need to come in and play right away, but he is a great depth piece to have. And if the whole tackle thing does pan out and he moves back to the position they played in college, then you can think, you know what, maybe we can let Cam Robinson walk after the upcoming season and see if Ezra Cleveland can work there. But I think this gives Jacksonville a lot of options and it makes them better this year. So I love this move for Jacksonville.
Yeah, Walker Little's banged up a little bit, so that's curious. And I think if he's healthy and Cam's gone, Walker will probably get an opportunity at left tackle, which he did late last year. So there's some moving parts there. But to your point about Ezra wanting to play tackle, maybe that just means he goes somewhere else. Either way, and Pete Prisco, the mayor of Jacksonville, talked about this earlier on HQ, it's more of a depth piece there than it would have been in Minnesota, it feels like, even though, as you mentioned, Dalton Reisner's signed and sort of doing his thing in Minnesota. But I agree with what you said. I mean, it's a great position to be in. If you're the Jaguars, you're clearly not only a playoff team. I think you won 5 games in a month, which is pretty remarkable. And,
first time in franchise history.
Yeah, I mean, typically because they're just usually only 4 weeks in a month, but whatever. They just play what's on the schedule. So yeah, keep stacking wins and keep stacking bodies on the interior to help Trevor Lawrence stay upright. I give it an A.
Yeah, I'm fine with A- for the Jaguars, and I think we can see for the Vikings. Nothing particularly special. Basically agree with your grades there. Breech.
Yay.
Leonard Williams traded from the Giants. Traded for the second time in his career. This time, so last time he got traded. Oh, two players who've been traded multiple times, right? Chase Claypool and now Leonard Williams. Leonard Williams, last time he was traded from the Jets to the Giants. Didn't have to travel very far. Didn't have to buy a new house, because he went from one stadium to the same stadium, basically. May have to do a little more real estate work this time around because he was traded to the Seattle Seahawks, which is about as far away as you can get from New York. In return, the Giants get a 2024 second-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick. Wilson, grade the trade.
I like it for both teams. I'll start with the Giants. It says that the Giants are done with the season. Fair enough.
Yes.
They're currently ranked 4th in terms of the draft order, so they could very much be in the Drake May conversation if they wanted to be. If the draft were today, it is not. Breech, April 25th, 2024. Make a note on your calendar. 177 days from now, as it turns out. But
Where
in terms
is the draft this year?
Detroit.
Ooh, that sounds like fun.
Awesome in late April.
Dude, what if the Lions win the Super Bowl? That place would be bananas.
Yeah.
N-A-N-A.
There it is.
N-A-N-A-N-A.
But I think if you're giving up on the season and you're Brian Dable and Joe Shane and you're moving on from dudes, Leonard Williams makes sense. And the reason I like this trade, if that's the conclusion you've come to, and I'll give him a B+, is because when they acquired Leonard Williams from the Jets in 2019, it cost them a 3rd and a 5th. They're making money on Leonard Williams in terms of draft picks because it's a 2nd and a 5th. And I actually like it even more for Seattle because Seattle's coming along. They struggle in the red zone on both sides of the ball, which is sort of weird, primarily on the offensive side because you have Geno Smith. But I think that's going to sort itself out. The defense is playing better. We know that the draft picks are balling out. We know Boye Mafe is balling out in year 2. And now you have Boye Mafe on the outside. They signed Jaron Reed, brought him back. They have Draymond Jones, who they got from Denver, in the middle. And now you add Leonard Williams. And that's one spicy meatball because, as I said on Sunday night, which is always surprising to say this time of year based on what we've seen over the first 8 weeks, the Seattle Seahawks, number 1 in the NFC West.
Yeah. Look, it's fun too. I always enjoy it when we get a situation like Leonard Williams traded on Monday to the Seahawks after the Giants, and like rough 48 hours for Giants fans, right? Like you lose that game in horrible fashion to the Jets, just 99% chance win expectancy. You somehow find a way to lose that game, and then you just wave the white flag by trading Leonard Williams. But good job getting a second round pick back. Anytime, dude, people, I think, I mean, I guess you guys did it last year, but like second round picks are really valuable. Those are really good picks. Like first round picks are reserved for superstar players. Leonard Williams is a very good player. And I love when there's like a little bit of a arms race in the division breach where we get Leonard Williams on a Monday and then Chase Young to the Niners on a Tuesday, like sort of everybody kind of getting in on this action, knowing that, if the Seattle defense is getting that much better from the NFC East, then, why not go and do the same thing for the 49ers defense? And that's exactly what, we saw happen with these two trades. Look, Joe Shane gets a second round pick for Leonard Williams. As Ryan points out, he makes money. Dave Gettleman, gives up a third round pick for Leonard Williams. Like Joe Shane getting more for Leonard Williams after he's played a couple of years than Dave Gettleman paid for him is pretty impressive.
Yeah, for me, this is one of the trades. I think this is probably the trade I like the most for both teams, where the Seahawks, as Ryan said, woke up Monday morning. We're like, holy crap, we're in first place in the NFC West. So let's go all in on the season because there's no reason we can't win this division and get the Super Bowl. Let's go back to our 2013 super team, and defense wins championships. Let's build a strong defensive team. The defense has played so much better over the past few weeks, and adding Leonard Williams is going to make this defense go from good to probably great. And so I love the move for the Seahawks. And like you guys already said, the Giants got some good compensation in return. And if you're a Giants fan, obviously you're depressed that the season is not going anywhere near what you had hoped. But hey, you just got a second round pick and a fifth round pick for Leonard Williams. So at least you can start counting down the days until April, like Wilson's doing.
All right, Rasul Douglas traded to the Buffalo Bills, Wilson, for a 2024 third round pick and a swap of 2024 fifth round picks. Grade the trade.
It's not a desperation trade in that they overpaid. They may have overpaid a little bit. And credit to Rasul Douglas for sort of revitalizing his career and refining himself, if you will. But Trey White went down with the Achilles, terrible after the ACL from a few years ago.
Brutal.
He was playing at a high level. Then you have Kyrie Elam, their former first-round pick, who just can't get on the field because he's not playing well enough. You have Christian Benford last year, the rookie from a year ago as well in that same draft class, who's been forced into a starting role, and he's been okay, but I think they want more depth there. They want some physicality, want some length. Rasul Douglas offers all that. And if you are the team making the trade, you've clearly given up on the season because things have not gone too well for the old Green Bay Packers. In fact, they were averaging 4.6 points per game in the first half. Going into last week's game, they scored 0 in the first half before Kirk Cousins got hurt, and they got blown out in that game. So I like the move a lot for the Bills. Third round feels sort of rich, so I'll give it a B. We'll see how it works out. Maybe it works out great. And for the Packers, I'll give it an A because their season's over.
Yeah.
Tough scene for the Packers. Yeah, I tend to agree too, Breech. All right. Donovan Peoples-Jones, Breacher Report, Peppa the Snorter, traded to the Detroit Lions for a 2025 sixth-round draft pick. Browns give up on DPJ and send him to the Lions. Your grade.
I'll give the Browns a B- and the Lions a B. Here's the thing with the Browns is that I can't fault them for making this trade. I think they thought and were hoping that Donovan Peoples-Jones could maybe be their number 2 guy behind Amari Cooper. But it looks like that's more Elijah Moore. And Peoples-Jones didn't have a single catch in their most recent game in that loss to the Seahawks on Sunday. I think he had 2 games this season with 0 receptions. His numbers, only 8 catches on the entire season. So this was the Browns saying, all right, we're giving up on him. Let's ship him off to Detroit. But with the Lions, I wouldn't be surprised if his numbers get better because, look, he has tough time separating from guys. But you know what? Things are going to open up because the opposing defenses have a lot of other issues to worry about when they're playing the Lions. They have to worry about Amon-Ra St. Brown. We mentioned Sam Laporta earlier. He is a stud tight end. Jamison Williams is in there. And when you're talking about the Lions, they lost Marvin Jones last week because he left the team for personal reasons and ended up getting released. So now you kind of had that spot open to bring a receiver in. And so I think Peoples-Jones is going to be a good role player in Detroit. So I'm going to give them a B+ and Browns B-, as I said.
And that's exactly right. He's the role player. And, it's sort of funny. You talk about him struggling to find his niche in Cleveland. He reminds me a little bit of Nico Collins, who didn't find his niche until CJ Stroud showed up. And maybe that's what Jared Goff can do for Donovan Peoples-Jones. But you're exactly right. He's just going to be he'll take Marvin Jones's place on the roster. And he's not going to be expected to come in there and catch 20 balls a game. He's going to be number 4, number 5, and you go from there. So I like it for the Lions. And again, if you're the Browns, I mean, you're still in it technically. Deshaun Watson will come back at some point, but you're not using them. You might as well get a pick out of it.
So DBJ, in terms of wide receivers, so the 2020 draft class, we're talking about a guy who's still really young, 99th percentile broad jump and vertical jump at the combine, 91st percentile hand size, 89th percentile arm length. Like, he profiles physically as a potential star player. And I would guess that somebody, because he went to Michigan, so nearby, maybe they think sort of getting closer to where he went to college will help him out, or maybe somebody in that front office had a really good grade on DPJ when he was coming out, or maybe their boy Aiden Hutchinson. They would have played together, I think. Maybe he's like, go, dude. That's my guy. He can ball. If he's available for nothing, go get him. You have to think there's something sort of behind that. Then the Marvin Jones things make sense too. I like the move for Detroit. Low risk, high reward potentially, especially with Jamo kind of struggling a little bit as the deep guy. And Cleveland, I don't know, man. Their depth chart is pretty weak at wide receiver. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll discuss more moves we wish teams had made. Stick around. That's next.
We need the sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
The NBA is like, psh, you think you don't say this league. That's our game. And the NBA does trades better than anybody. The NFL, it's gotten better in recent years, thanks in large part to the trade deadline being pushed back a little bit. Teams being able to more easily move players because of the lack of cap restriction and all that. But we didn't get some of the juicy stuff that we really wanted to see. So let's discuss some trades we wish we had seen. Wilson, a trade you would have liked to see is...
So the Bills signed Leonard Fournette to the practice squad, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say out loud, but here we are. I wish they would have signed Derrick Henry. If you're going to go all in on the run game.
Traded for him, yeah. Go all in on the run game. You have James Cook there. He's not an every down back. Actually, Derrick Henry's probably the only every down back left, it sort of feels like. Get him into that offense. Take some of the pressure off Josh Allen, although people keep saying Josh Allen, gets his juices flowing once he gets popped. I would like him not to get popped so often. And I think that helps with getting Derrick Henry, get him out of Tennessee. He's not going to be in Tennessee after the end of the year anyway. That would have been fun. That would have perhaps, you're not going to scare Mike McDaniel. He doesn't scare easily, Breech, but at least giving them pause to know that the Bills are not just sitting on their laurels, or at least sitting in their hands, probably is a better way to say it. And just going to try to take the Dolphins on one Josh Allen at a time.
Wilson, what would you have given up for Derrick Henry?
You probably have to overpay a third. I would have preferred to go day 3, but I think if you offer Rand Carthon a third, why wouldn't you? Because you're not going to re-sign him.
I think I don't disagree with you in terms of what I would like to give up for Derrick Henry. My guess is that with Carthon coming in the way he did and John Robinson basically getting fired the second that A.J. Brown torched the Titans because he traded him and Mike Vrabel wasn't happy, that Mike Vrabel has a lot of say in who would be getting dealt on this team. I also think I heard Amy Adams-Strunk got involved and was not willing to trade Derrick Henry maybe. Regardless, I would guess that Mike Vrabel is trying to toe the line here a little bit on they trade, Tannehill gets hurt, they trade Kevin Byard, and then Levis looks awesome. They're like, oopsie. And that he probably would have wanted at least a second round pick for Derrick Henry. I don't get me wrong. I think that would have been an overpay, but I think they just wanted too much for Henry, knowing he can do what he can do in that run game for that team and for that offense. I'll throw mine out too, since it involves Derrick Henry. I would have liked Derrick Henry to go to the Ravens Like Baltimore has Gus Edwards, Gus Bus. You got Justice Hill. Those guys, they're nice. But imagine running the friggin' read option with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Imagine trying to stop Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry in that offense. I would have loved to have seen it. Same reasons as we want to see him on the Bills. It'd be fun. Take the pressure off the quarterback. Contender. Derrick Henry in the playoffs with the freaking Ravens with the lead. Good night. Breech, what about you?
I'll stay in the AFC North. I would have liked to see my Cincinnati Bengals. I should have worn that helmet for Halloween. Go out and get a tight end. I think if there's one weakness with that offense right now, they were hoping that Irv Smith would fill that. He just has not. Bengals should have called up and brought back their old buddy Hayden Hurst, who was so big for that offense last year. I wish he was still on the team. If they had called around, you could have checked in on Hayden Hurst, Mo Alley Cox. Maybe the Cardinals would have just done a fire sale, got rid of Zach Ertz at a very, very, very low price. So the Bengals adding a tight end would have been nice, but it did not happen.
The weird thing is Hayden Hurst has been terrible for the Panthers. He's even talked about it, but it's only Adam Thielen there. Irv Smith has been terribler for the Bengals somehow. So I actually don't hate that, even though Hayden Hurst hasn't played well for Carolina.
Yeah.
Different offense.
Don't mind that at all. Breech, is there a trade that you would have liked one of the Bengals division opponents to make?
Let's stay in the AFC North, Brinson. I would have found it amusing and also fascinating and added some drama if the Browns had traded for a quarterback. I mean, there was definitely, hey, look, some speculation they might go out and try and get Jacoby Brissett. And could you imagine if that would have happened? You have a quarterback with a fully guaranteed $230 million contract on the bench, and you go out and trade for the guy who used to be your starter before Deshaun Watson got. I mean, it would have just been totally bonkers. But if the Browns don't know what the deal is with Watson's shoulder and how soon he can get back, I don't think trading for a quarterback would have been a horrible idea. And Brissett would have made the most sense since he was familiar with the system. But they did not do it. So it's PJ Walker or bust until Watson gets back.
I'm going to double down, Breech. I should have brought back Jacoby, Colt McCoy, Brian Hoyer, Brady Quinn. Just go down the list. Bring them all back and find one.
Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
Johnny Football.
Yes. That would have been a bigger deal than your hypothetical Cowboys trade, Wilson. I can't believe that you came up with this and not Breech. This is like I'm surprised. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Breech wrote an article about the fake trade that you would have liked to seen happen that you were about to propose.
He was probably whispering in my ears. I was sleeping last night when he stuck into my hotel room.
With the headline, Cowboys make blockbuster trade for Aaron Donald, calling why this didn't happen.
Yeah, that's right. That's how you have to write it up. But imagine that, right? So Dan Quinn gets one of the best players on planet Earth. This defense somehow gets more incredible, and you're going to give a first-round pick, and you don't care about it. Like, you feel good about that, even though Aaron Donald, maybe he's only going to play for 2 or 3 more years. I don't care. If he plays for 2 more years, you give a first-round pick and you win the Super Bowl this year, no one is saying anything. You're taking the old less need, forget them picks approach. It might cost more than a first-round pick if that conversation were ever had. So maybe that's what threw a monkey wrench in the plans. But I just love the thought of Dan Quinn getting his hands on someone as disruptive as Aaron Donald, when Dan Quinn is already about being disruptive with that defense. They get after it on the front end, and then everyone gets interceptions, starting with Teron Bland on the back end. So, yeah, that would have been fun.
What was the Calvin Johnson story you wrote that was like the most misleading headline of all time? Like, it made me
Calvin
mad.
Johnson dyes his hair.
Oh, it was like Calvin Johnson was dying.
It was about retirement. I can't remember.
Yeah, it wasn't even.
No, it was ex-Lions receiver tells Calvin Johnson to unretire, and most people just kind of didn't read the tells part, so it read as Calvin Johnson's going to unretire.
Yeah, that's how I read it.
Yeah, there was something shady about it there.
And I read it that way because that's how Breech wrote it before he went back in and changed it.
I think you did. You think you did change something on him. Anywho, moving along. A team that needed to make a trade, Breech. Since you're AFC North heavy, why don't you see if you can hit the full bingo card here, buddy?
I love bingo. And Bluey. They're sisters on a show. You know what, though? I will say that I'm going to stick with Brinson. He already said it was Ravens, Derrick Henry. I think the Ravens, it didn't necessarily have to be Derrick Henry, but I do think that they should have made a deal. There were running backs out there to be had, but I'm guessing either the teams weren't interested or the asking price was just too high, whether that was Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. The Giants seemed adamant that they weren't going to trade him, but after losing Sunday, who knows, maybe he could have been had. Josh Jacobs seems pretty frustrated in Las Vegas right now, but whatever the reason is, the Ravens did not get a deal done, and that's going to be interesting moving forward with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, because he's not, I mean, they're good running backs. They're not great running backs. The Ravens could have beefed up their offense big time if they had added a really, really good running back.
Wilson, a team that should have made a trade but didn't, is the...
I think the Denver Broncos thought they won the Super Bowl, so they're just taking the rest of the season off when they beat the Chiefs. So they're not really paying attention to the comings and goings. You're not trading Patrick Surtain, so I get that. But I was sort of surprised Jerry Jeudy's name didn't pop up anywhere because he actually played relatively well for at least by Jerry Jeudy standards. And Cortland Sutton's another one that remains with the team, and that's fine. They're going to not be competitive in that division, and they can move on and figure things out over the summer. But all the talk with Jerry Jeudy going somewhere where teams needed wide receivers, I thought he might hear his name called. No such luck.
Yeah, I would have thought the Broncos got involved in something. You sort of wonder too, like, and Jerry Jeudy has no year left on his contract too. So maybe that's not it. So maybe that has to do with it too. And like, I do think that the Broncos and the Titans winning their games on Sunday may have changed their minds in terms of how aggressive they want to be sellers. I think Sean Payton wants to win as many games as he can this year, while also getting value back. And there probably was not a super robust market out there. Breech, give me, actually, Wilson, you give me one more. You can go for the steal if you want to try and take a team that needed to make a trade and that didn't. If you want to try and steal the final AFC North team from Breech.
Yeah, Breech. I wanted the Steelers to make a move and trade for Joe Burrow, but they didn't do it.
Sorry. He was on the market for first-round picks.
Third round pick for Gardner Minshew.
Third round pick for Joe Burrow. Pat Fryermuth's been on the shelf with a hamstring. There was some conversation. Breech, you talked about tight ends for Cincinnati. There was some thought that maybe the Steelers would do the same. I didn't necessarily care if they went out and got a tight end because they have so many other concerns. But cornerback could have been an issue. Jalen Johnson was a name that was thrown around a few weeks ago. He stays put in Chicago. He's in the final year of his deal, I believe. I wouldn't mind seeing that, even though Joey Porter Jr., as Brinson has mentioned, has played relatively well the more snaps he's gotten. But this team has a lot of problems, and one tight end or one cornerback isn't going to fix those things. But I would have liked to see them do something.
All right, Breech, give me one more team as well.
Mine is a team that we've already mentioned. It is the Dallas Cowboys. Wilson had a crazy fantasy of Aaron Donald going there. That obviously would have been wildly amazing because they could use a little help on the defensive front. But I think some help in the secondary, not even secondary help, some depth in the secondary. Jalen Johnson would have been a great addition. But I don't think the Cowboys were in a spot where they were going to overpay for anyone because the team's already good and you don't have to overpay when you're good. And they seem happy with what they have. So I think the Cowboys probably should have made a move, but they didn't. And we'll find out Sunday. If they get blasted by the Eagles, there's going to be some second guessing about their decision-making this week. But if they win, then all's good and move forward.
Yeah, that's right. No knee-jerk reactions around here. All right, let's take another break. And when we come back, we will look what the deadline meant for various contenders who got the best in return and much more next.
An NWSL semifinal Sunday you'll never forget, with an icon leading the Shield winners against a legend who's hanging up her boots, and a budding star looking for back-to-back championships against a squad determined to give their captain a grand finale. All on CBS Sports Network.
All righty. The dust is settled. What do you guys think about all the trades that went down and which moves helped their teams the most? Let's look at the buyers first. The most impactful trade of all the buyers, Wilson, was who?
As you guys are well aware, my OCD meant that I filled out the form that Harry sent us as soon as we got
Charlie.
Him. I don't know who Charlie is. Is your brother?
My brother.
Charlie in the Chocolate Factory? Is that what you're watching tonight?
Yeah.
Are you dressing up as Willy Wonka for Halloween?
I'm going to lay in. The original Charlie is when the whole family lays in the same bed, which I always thought was weird. But I'll be doing that, watching that movie. So when Harry said the rundown, I filled this out immediately, and that was before Chase Young went down. But I'm going to stick with it. Josh Dobbs going to the Vikings. You sort of poo-pooed it earlier, Breech, that it's not going to be an impact signing. I think in 2 weeks, Josh Dobbs will be the starter. I'm not going to guarantee he wins, but that's it. He's just going to be the starter. So he has an opportunity to perhaps do for that team with better players around him what he did for the Cardinals, which is flash at times and then throw some interceptions at times, and hopefully you can balance that out with the defense with Brian Flores getting after it.
I mean, dude did step in and start a playoff game for the
Cowboys.
Yeah, beat the Cowboys. Yeah, exactly.
He cost them the win. The Titans were winning, and then Dobbs fumbled it with 2 minutes left, and then Jacksonville returned it for a touchdown.
He was
Titans would be in the playoffs. If the Titans would have kneeled the ball 3 times instead of letting Josh Dobbs do anything, they would have won the game.
Management problem.
He's signed off the street that week.
Well, yeah, I'm saying that you don't give him any credit for that game. There's not that.
Breech, he was selling sofas 48 hours before.
That's fine, but we shouldn't be using that as a game saying he could save the Vikings because he played in that game.
Right, fair enough.
I'm just saying that this is a guy who can just you toss him out there out of nowhere and he can do decently. Yeah. Like we saw with Arizona. All right, Breech. Most impactful trade for you was what?
I'm going to go with the Seahawks acquiring Leonard Williams. We talked a little earlier, but I just think that when you are a contender and you give up what the Seahawks gave up, you have to feel that this is, hey, we're 1 or 2 pieces away from being a Super Bowl contender, from possibly winning the Super Bowl. And I think the Seahawks got a guy they really feel like can put their defense over the top here. And obviously they had just lost Uchenna Nwosu for the season. So you want to add some defensive pieces, and they did that here. So I love that move by Seattle.
I dig it. I'm going to stick in the NFC West and say that the most impactful purchase of the day was Chase Young. I think that you put Chase Young on that defensive line with Nick Bosa, his old college teammate. I don't know if they were roommates, but college teammate, and Eric Armstead and Steve Wilkes dialing things up, and it could get a little ugly. I think Chase Young we've seen the Niners do a really good job with these in-season trades. Obviously, the McCaffrey deal was a fantastic one. And I think Chase Young comes in and knowing a big close this year gets him paid on a high-profile team that could make a Super Bowl run. I think he has an outstanding final stretch of the 2023 season. All right, Breech, the best return on a trade for a seller was?
I am going to give that award to the Washington Commanders, specifically for the Montez Sweat deal. I feel like they called up the Bears and they're giggling in the background, let's just see if we can get a 2nd-round pick because they're the Bears and they'll probably give it to us. And then when the Bears said yes, they fainted because they couldn't believe the Bears were willing to give up a 2nd-round pick for a guy who was only under contract for 9 more games. That is rather unbelievable. And then I'm sure the Commanders were laughing even harder when Chase Young only went for a 3rd-round pick. The Bears paid more for Montez Sweat than the 49ers did for Chase Young. The 49ers are a contender who needed Chase Young. The Bears are not a contender. So the Commanders getting a 2nd-round pick for Montez Sweat was brilliant.
What I'm hearing is that Chase Young is the Gardner Minshew of defensive ends because he went for a 3rd-round pick.
Hey, Gardner Minshew's pretty good. Did you watch him play this year?
I'm going to go with Leonard Williams.
Okay.
For the same reasons that I laid out earlier. They got him for a 3rd and a 5th. They turned it around for a 2nd and a 5th. That's a win on a team that's given up, if not explicitly, then certainly by the decisions they've made over the last 24 hours. And he helps that Seattle team as well. But I think it is great news for the Giants, who have some tough decisions to make in the offseason, starting with old Daniel 10 cents.
Danny Nichols. So when the Bears last year traded for Chase Claypool, they were 3-4, I believe, having just beaten the Patriots on that Monday Night Football game. You're currently 2-6, and you just gave up a 2nd-round pick. What are you doing?
You need picks. You're building for the future.
That pick is going to be in the top 40. I don't understand it. It's wild to me that a team like the Bears would think that's what you want to do. I mean, I was going to look up and see. You can go through it. Look at just a bunch of drafts. And
I just want to say this while you're looking that up: that when the Chicago Bears social media person, when the Bears win the Super Bowl in 3 months, and you cut this clip, just make it clear that I am on board with this move because I think it's ingenious. You just got to say that just in case, Breech.
I mean, look at it like this 2020. We mentioned the 2023 NFL draft, 2022 second round, early second round. Logan Hall, Christian Watson, Roger McCreary, Breece Hall, Jalen Petre, Arnold Ebiketie. Thank you, Wilson, draft analyst. Kyler Gordon, Boya Mafe, Kenneth Walker. I mean, dude, you can get some good players in that range, and the Bears are giving up for the second straight year a high second round pick.
We need to do what Wilson just suggested and just have a show where we give every possible opinion. Like, the Bengals going to win the Super Bowl. No, they're going to lose in the wild card round. And then we can clip from that show and put it on Twitter. We'll never actually put it on YouTube. It will just be
put one on Instagram and one on Twitter. And then just see if people are following us in both places. You can do so, by the way, at Pick6Pod on Instagram or on Twitter. Go and check it out. Also, go and trick or treat. It's freaking Halloween. Of course, we'll be back tomorrow with plenty of content. We'll have the Brady Tuesdays with Brady, Thursday pick show. And of course, these old Snorty Magoo and myself and Ryan Wilson will be back on Sunday night to recap the Week 9 games. We are in the meat of the season, the heart of the season. The temperatures are dropping everywhere. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. For Wilson, for Breech, I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later.